Okay, let's go ahead, bring to order the meeting of Templeton Community Services District Board of Directors. Today is March 4th, 7 p.m. Roll call, please.
Directors Bardonish,
Here.
Logan. Here. Mortensen,
Here.
Peterson,
Here.
and Tyrone. Here.
Thank you. Please stand for pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Order of business, do any board members would like to change the order of business? Business items, okay. Public comment, members of public may address the board on any items of interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, but not on the agenda today. Any public comments, any public out there? Okay. All right, consent agenda, we have two items, we have the minutes from February 18th, 2025, and we have letter of support for AB 259. Any board members would like to pull those two items? Questions, public, any? Okay, if not, then I'll entertain a motion for the consent agendas items 6A and B.
I'll make a motion that the
Okay.
board approve consent items 6, A and B.
Okay, do I have a second? I'll second. All right, roll call, please.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Mortensen,
All right.
Peterson,
All right.
Tyrone. Yes. And Bardonish.
Aye. Great, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Business item, we are to our 2024 Fire and Emergency Service Annual Report. And this is our Fire Chief, Tom Peterson. Welcome.
Thank you and good evening. It's my privilege tonight to bring to you our fire department annual report and a little PowerPoint presentation for you. As the board knows, we do one of these every year. Well, at least since I've started, we've done one of these every year. And the purpose of the annual report is to highlight and share department achievements with the board, the community, make recommendations for future needs for the department. And then identify the significant changes for the year, the challenges we've had, and those types of things. So this year, again, with the year that we've had, it was a little bit of a, I'll say a slow year with regards to fires, but it wasn't a slow year with regards to calls. It was an extremely busy year. And so we had some challenges throughout the year, and especially during the fire season with some little bit of staffing here and there. We did have a couple of captains that were out during a period of time. And then we did have a lot of downtime with our Type 1 engine this year. Various repairs. As you probably saw in the report, there was a little more money spent on the engine this year than in previous, well, I'll say the last year. Previous year before that is when we did our big upgrade on it. We did a lot of work with regards to the station and are moving forward with the station. And I'll get more in detail with that later in the report. We'll talk about our responses. We had a lot of responses out of county this last year, but we did actually have to turn down about 4 different, I'll say, opportunities to go out of county as a result of some staffing issues that we had. One of those, ironically, was actually the Los Angeles fires in the Palisades, and then we got asked again on the Eaton fire. But unfortunately, because of some issues with regards to staffing, we weren't able to send an engine. In fact, the only strike team that went down from our area was kind of a mixed bag of engines that took a Santa Maria engine with them because we didn't have enough resources to fill to go down. Kind of sets the state of affair with regards to the fire service in our state too, that staffing levels and, the amount of engines and the amount of staff available just aren't what they used to be with the amount of calls that we're having. Let's see, staffing, we've had very limited turnover again this year, which is outstanding. We did lose engineer Madison Harris. She left for another position, and we actually promoted Logan Handley to engineer. And then we received 2 grants I'll say grants this last year. Obviously, the board knows about the fire engine, and then we got our VFC grant, which is the $10,000 one. Our priorities with regards to the 24-25 year was getting that fire station expansion, design and construction basically started, and we've done that. We're right at the cusp right now of submitting to the county, and we're just waiting on a couple. I'll say the only hiccup has been PG&E with it so far, and I'll call it a good hiccup because it's the delay that we've had is PG&E is looking at some potential cost savings for us. I can't get into how much because we don't know yet, because they have not made a determination on what the drop and the new feed will be for the new station. As soon as they make that determination, then I'll be able to let the general manager know and let the board know what that cost savings will be with regards to PG&E. So again, we are concentrating a lot on our community risk reduction projects to protect the district. This year, I'm going to focus on the last part of this year, meeting with who is called Fire Safe Council. I know some of the board members are familiar with Fire Safe Council, and we're looking at doing a couple of things with them. We're looking at potentially going through and seeing if it's even feasible to clear out Toad Creek or do some abatement within Toad Creek and around the base of T Hill. That's a lot of our primary fire density with regards to vegetation that really concerns me as the chief in the community. And if we get a fire established in those areas, it's going to be very difficult to get something to stop it, especially if we get a little bit of wind up. We're looking at plans to relocate and enhance the department training facility. That's something that I'll get into later in the report. And then we're looking at opportunities to enhance partnership and consolidation with the North County departments, and looking at cost sharing of some of the items that we purchase, which brings down the cost when we do mass purchases of turnouts or breathing apparatus or whatever the need is. If we can consolidate that and look to all purchase the same equipment, then it brings those costs down and it makes the bids more competitive also. And then obviously reinforcing our family culture and retaining the personnel that we have. This is our current organization chart, and it just kind of shows the structure of the department. 3 captains, 3 engineers, and then we have our part-time firefighters, which share those shifts so they don't go over the part-time numbers with regards to work limitation, hour work limitation. And then we have 3 reserves right now. But the reserves are seldom tapped with regards to covering the other shifts because we have such a significant buffer in the reserve or the part-time firefighter positions that they can tend to cover one another also. So that hasn't been too much of a problem for us. My first priority is obviously safety when it comes to staffing of our firefighters and the community. When we're looking at firefighter and public safety, I have to look at some of the OSHA codes, some of the NFPA requirements, And staffing is one of those things that jumps out at us all the time, excuse me. OSHA is one of those things that we have what's called a 2 in, 2 out rule. And if we don't have that ability to have 2 people out, to send 2 people in for a rescue, we have to wait. Unless we have a life threat situation, but sometimes we don't know. And so we have to make determinations based on what we see and the evidence that we have, time of day, vehicles in the driveway, those types of things to determine whether we might have a victim inside. And then we have to be able to back that up, why we made that call to go in, especially if we get a firefighter hurt and we don't have 2 people outside that are that backup OSHA requirement team. Again, the staffing levels that we're at right now are great. We have the 3-0 staffing. That is probably the minimum that any department wants to be at. There are some departments that have 2-0 staffing, but it does a lot of things. It affects their ISO rating. It affects their effectiveness. And with regards to fire suppression and rescue operations, you just don't have that third person. I can't emphasize it enough, is really critical on an engine. Even on EMS and medical calls, the capability to run a code, a simple heart attack. Well, I won't call it simple, but a heart attack, where we have a lot of people with a lot of hands doing a lot of things on one person. And it's a dynamic situation, and you reduce that by one person and it can create some pretty ineffective outcomes for the patient. Compliance with the national standards, NFPA 1710, and I'll get into that on the next slide. Again, keeping that 3-0 staffing, we can reduce dependence on automatic and mutual aid. Now this year, we've seen situations where our crew has been on calls, and we've had we seem to be the king of back-to-back calls within Templeton for some reason. So a back-to-back call is when we get dispatched to a call, and then while we're on that call, we break another call. And sometimes we're capable to break loose from the first call and go to the second call. Other times we're asking for auto aid or mutual aid. The problem we've been having, especially this last year, everybody getting a little busier, Station 30, who is our automatic aid engine, they have not been as dependable as they have in the past, I should say. They've expanded their response zone, and they get called out to what is called hardcover other stations on a regular basis. And one of the hardcover stations that they have to go out to is Heritage Ranch at Station 33 at Heritage Ranch. So that's a significant distance away, takes them well out of our response area. Now we have to rely on Atascadero and Paso Robles at that time. Paso has gotten significantly busy, and a lot of times they don't have an engine available. So we're depending upon Atascadero, and they in turn have gotten busier also. So we have had situations where just that second call that we have puts us in a critical need with regards to our auto and mutual aid. So having that third person on board, we can even break loose sometimes. We've had callback where our captains who live in town and some of our engineers who live close have been able to get back, staff the engine, and respond quicker than we've gotten our auto or mutual aid engine in. So that's kind of that reduced dependence on auto and mutual aid by keeping our staffing levels high or adequate. And then obviously the economic liability with regards to any issues. When we have 2 people on an engine, you start to see a higher propensity for back injuries, a higher propensity for other injuries in the fire service. And just that third person on the engine keeps those numbers lower. This is gonna be History, excuse me. The history of NFPA 1710, it was released in, or the most recent version was released in September 2016. And this describes the minimum staffing. And I won't get into every detail of this, but I think the most important element is the bottom right there where it talks about how we respond and the industry standard for responding to fires. So when we have a low hazard fire, and a low hazard fire can be identified as a single family residential structure fire. So something we were just on last month at the mobile home park. That is 15 people minimum. That's what we're looking for. And that's what's gonna keep our personnel safe. That's what's gonna make us most effective to go in and exact a rescue and to suppress the fire. So that minimum level of 15, we're kind of achieving it. If I get a second chief officer to come in for overhead, we're right there at 14. But if we start losing an engine or something like that, then we're really reduced. So this is just, again, for the board's information with regards to the standards and OSHA requirements that are out there today. Our response to statistics. So this last year, we've done a lot of mutual aid and auto aid, but we've had a significant amount of calls in the district. And I'll just start with our call volume over the last 4 years. And as you can see, it's gone up pretty significantly. And in 2021, boy, I can't even read that from here, 858. Oh yeah, I could go like this, huh? To 920, to 986, to 1161. So that's a significant, well, and you'll have to excuse the 1161. It was actually 1,162 calls. So I was off by one on this slide. And so we've seen a significant jump from last year, 170 plus additional calls. And I'll kind of give you an idea of why that happened. Aside from the fact that we're just getting busier. So here's the call breakdowns. Again, from last year, you can see the types of calls don't vary a whole lot from year to year. And it's roughly the same percentages of kind of what we do. 57% as opposed to 58% medical calls, 24 as opposed to 26%, public service assists. And then with regards to fires, right there at 5%. And so those are pretty consistent. This is a breakdown of the actual calls. This is what took me a little longer to kind of put together with the software program that we have. And it shows each month breakdown. This does have a pointer, right? Yeah. And you can see right here in August, 121 calls. This is where we tend to get our busiest, 112, 121, 113 in those summer months. And we do have an uptick in January typically. But this is a good breakdown. And then you'll see the calls for 2024 over here, 1,162 as opposed to 23. These are the, as I mentioned, we didn't have a lot of structure fires last year. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about last year as a result of the calendar year. Already this year, we've had 3 structure fires as of 2025. So last year, we had several close calls. We didn't have any significant actual fully involved structures in town. We went to several in Atascadero and Paso Robles, but didn't have anything super significant in town. We did have, like I say, some close calls. And then this is our property loss with regards to some of these calls. And probably the closest one we had was at the Rolling Hills apartment complex. We had a dryer that started to take off in one of the laundry rooms. And that would have gotten pretty significant because that particular laundry room was not sprinklered. So as I mentioned earlier, this is how I'm going to kind of describe the call differences. I wish I could have got this broken into the zones, but I'm going to try and explain it the best I can with regards to these numbers. So if you look up at Ramada, Via Paseo Palms, that particular area is 170 calls. And the majority of those are at the Via Paseo Palms apartment complex. It's a senior low-income apartment complex, and that's typically a decent call generator for us. There are, now this orange dot here includes kind of a grid. That includes some more calls in that general area. So if I would say 170 calls in that general area, if we had a couple of traffic accidents along Ramada, like 3 or 4, it would reduce that to 167. And then a couple of calls at some of the businesses that were in that grid, it could reduce it to 165 or 160, somewhere in that range. So that's kind of how these work. The big call increase for us was this area right here. It doesn't align very well, but obviously our new apartment complex went in over at Templeton Place Apartments on Peterson Ranch Road. That's our self-help apartment complex. And it's a low-income senior apartment complex. And I know it was indicated that, you know, self-help housing didn't see a lot of increases in calls and those types of things with fire departments. Well, we can see the actual numbers. And again, this has that same dynamic that takes place up here. The grid covers kind of the north side of Peterson Ranch Road and the area in Limestone, Sunnyside, those streets also. So if you take those calls and extract them out of the 114, I think it was, we were about 90 some calls at Peterson Place Apartments in that general area. So the same thing here is we have our residential care facility, which is 290 Heather Vineyard Hills, but we have 283 Heather Court, which is Templeton Garden, which is a senior apartment complex there. And so that's broken up between those two facility and apartment complex in that location. And then one of the bigger call generators since I've been here that's really getting us out a lot with regards to significant health issues. The one thing, let me back up really quick. At 290 Heather Court in 2020, I believe it was, we had a higher call volume, but we were going to what were identified as transport calls to Vineyard Hills. We no longer do that. When I got here, we had a conversation with that facility and said, look, if we're going to come here and do transport calls, lift assists, you're a staffed facility. You should have people to lift people back into bed, those types of things. Then we're going to start charging for them. And so with that being said, we have not gone on any that I'm aware of that have been non-emergency calls. So typically when we're called to 290 Heather Court, Vineyard Hills, it's a legitimate medical call. And so we're not doing the transfers or the lift assist or those types of things there anymore. With regards to DaVita Dialysis Center, that 124 calls, those are actually sick people that are going to the doctor or going to the kidney dialysis center, and they're having a medical emergency either from the parking lot to the facility, in the facility, or coming out of the facility back to their car. We see a lot of issues in the parking lot and those types of things in vehicles in that parking lot. Okay. Response times. Again, it's the goal of Templeton Fire Department to have our average response time at 6 minutes, 90% of the time. And as you can see, we have done a really good job at achieving that. We're actually, our median response time is right here, 4 minutes, 59 seconds, 97% of the time. So our average is 5:08. So we're almost a minute under our desired and kind of industry standard. And where we base that on is that 4 to 6 minute threshold for brain death. On an emergency call, when somebody goes down of a heart attack or something like that, that clock starts ticking, and we want to be there under 6 minutes to start the care that they need to stop the brain death. So oxygen, CPR, external defibrillator, those types of efforts to get the process started to get them back going again. This slide shows the auto aid received and given. This was another one of those ones that was really nice to see that we got out of our software program. So if you look at right here where it says none, that's that top column. And I keep forgetting the number here, 845 calls. That's what we handled by ourselves. No auto aid, no mutual aid received or given. That was just in town. What happened mano a mano with the patient, a vehicle accident, or whatever the call was, if it was a lift assist or anything else. The 140 calls here is the automatic aid that we received either from CAL FIRE or County Fire Station 30, Atascadero, or Paso Robles. The 71 calls was mutual aid given. So we went to that district or that community and gave mutual aid. The darker 67 was automatic aid given, and the darker yet was mutual aid received. And we received mutual aid 39 times from, again, either one of those three or all of them at any point in time. Our training hours. So again, this is another area where we really excelled this year in our training hours. And we really wanted to focus on, maybe this is why we didn't have any structure fires in town or significant ones, because we focused primarily on our structure fire training at the tune of 81% of our training. We did a lot of medical and we did a lot of driver operator. But we really focused on the structure fire training this year. And then when we did our breakdown, you can see that it jumped. We were looking for an average of 240 hours. It's our annual goal. And we achieved 346 hours per person this last year with regards to training. Fire prevention. We started our mandatory inspection programs, 100% completed, 19 different facilities there. And then we had the breakdown from 23, you can see, to 24 of our inspections that we did with regards to sprinklers, fire alarms, weed checks, consults, Knox box inspections, and or annual inspections, which are the 19 that are included up here. The bit of an issue that we're having with the mandatory inspections is finding property owners, getting the responses to correct the violations. So we're still working those bugs out.
Can I ask a question or should I wait till the end?
Sure.
What are the Knox inspections?
Knox boxes are, they're entry key systems. And each business is required by the California Fire Code to have one on their facility. And what it does is that we carry a key that's on the engine. We open that up and then their keys are locked inside of that. So what we try and do is we try and go out into the community and inspect those during annual inspections and make sure that the keys they have in the box actually fit the front door. That way we don't have to cut them off, break something.
Can I ask one other question?
Yeah.
Can you go back to the chart about mutual and automatic aid?
This one?
Yeah. Were there any instances where we were needed either mutual or automatic aid and it was not able to be provided, or yeah?
No, we haven't gotten to that point. We've had delayed engines, where, you know, and primarily on this situation, what we run into is delays in ambulance responses. So we get on scene and we've been tracking some of those numbers. We don't have a good system to track it because, the ambulance company covets their response times pretty tightly. And getting that information, especially even through, the sheriff's department, which is called MedCom. They are the ones that dispatch the ambulances. And we'll probably get more into some of that during strategic planning and share more information with regards to what's going on with the ambulance contract. But their response times, have been up to 25 minutes where our crew is on scene and dealing with a medical emergency. Just a couple months ago, we had a diabetic emergency and a gentleman had a significant issue going on. He was not conscious. We needed to get him glucose immediately. And the medic unit was delayed by 20+ minutes. Yeah, and so those are the unfortunate responses that we see with regards to the ambulance. What was it? Oh, back. Okay, yeah, I think I covered everything there. Yeah. Again, we had our fire prevention week with the kids back in the schools, which is great. We get to pass out the information we have. The kids love seeing the fire trucks, but at the same time, they get that fire safety message, which is really important. The stop, drop, and roll. Plus, we get a lot of that information home to the parents, who then get to see the information on grease fires in kitchens, stop, drop, and roll, exit drills, those types of things that a lot of families don't get information on. Our fire apparatus, again, our frontline engine is 7195. Won't get into a lot of detail. We did approximately 8,700 miles logged in 2024. It was out of service for several months with certain issues. And then it responded to 1,066 calls. We're still working on our compartment and cab leaks. They have gotten a little worse. So every time we get some rain, you know, we're keeping an eye on our compartments and we're drying them out the best we can so we don't have those electrical issues that we had last year. And then, like I said, this last year, as opposed to the year before, I think we spent 24,000. Well, we doubled that this last year with the repairs that we had.
I have a question on that. So you said it responded to 1,066 calls?
Yep.
So that was the engine that responded to, and then we had total calls of 1160. So that's only 100 calls that it missed, even though it was out for several months?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't out several months continuously,
Not-
just a day here, hours here.
Yeah, exactly. So
Oh, okay.
cumulatively, it was out probably 2 months.
Okay.
But it was just periods of time
Okay,
that it was out. It wasn't out for a 2-month period of time in a block. There was a period where it was out for 3 weeks straight. And it had to do with a part. We couldn't get a part. That was a supply chain issue. 7160, again, it went out several times last year, but didn't put nearly the miles on, that it did the previous year, 3,694 miles. But the fires were somewhat more local. And, if you remember the previous year, they were up in Northern California, even up in Oregon, for several days. And so that put some significant miles on the engine, during that period of time. It responded to 83 calls, and there really haven't been any issues with this apparatus at all mechanically. 7130, which is converted to our utility vehicle, 76,000 miles. It went on 3 calls. Those 3 calls typically were during the 4th of July, and we don't record when it responds to like a structure fire to help us pick up hose and load hose into the back of it or those types of things. So those calls aren't recorded, but it went on several of those too. And then it helps us out with regards to hauling hose back that's dirty hose that we don't load back on the engine right away from our training grounds and those types of things. So we throw the hose in the back of the truck, the utility, it comes down here, we unroll it, clean it, dry it, and then it goes back on the engine and doesn't get all the sand and grit and dirt up in the hose bed of the actual fire engine. It has had some transmission issues, and when we were towing the chipper this last summer, we had some significant slipping in the transmission. The command vehicle, the 22 Tahoe, added some additional miles this year, responded to 58 calls. And again, just for the board's information, I don't actually record a lot of the calls I go on. I just follow the engine and I don't assign myself to that call. I would say probably closer to a couple hundred calls, but the ones that I hit the button and say, I'm responding, or get on the engine, or get on the radio and say, attach me to this call, probably closer to a couple hundred. Or I'm sorry, the ones that I say respond to on the radio are 58, but it's probably closer to a couple hundred that I actually go on. This is the current staff, career staff. Again, 3 captains, 3 engineers, myself. And then the fire station, and this is just kind of a refresher, that we've been, it was built in 1996, 4-bay station. It was not housed, or not designed, I should say, for 24-hour firefighters. We responded, and obviously I know this, and I know the board knows that I've got history with Pendleton. We responded from our homes, came here, when that model started dying, and people got busier, people couldn't live up to the training requirements, especially the hours that were required for volunteer firefighters and those things. We just saw those numbers diminish significantly. And then the transition started to full-time. Since then, we've done the best we can. In 2000, San Luis Ambulance did go up and create the kitchenette and kind of the room where it was the bunk room for the ambulance folks to sleep in. But it wasn't designed for individual dorms and an actual kitchen, an actual kitchen table and those types of things that a fire department or fire station should have. Yeah, and again, even to the point where we had to convert one of the office spaces to the captain's bedroom down here. which kind of separates them from the crew. And it's not the most, opportune situation to have the captains separated. We've done what we can with regards to bringing speakers in there for alerting and those types of things, but I won't give up any names, but we have had captains sleep through calls and these guys come down and knock on their door. Okay.
He wasn't pointing at you.
I saw a lot of heads turn this way, that's why I'm doing this.
Present company excluded. So again, and I know you guys have heard this, just kind of a refresher, the PPE lockers, that are out in the apparatus bay, a big no-no, with regards to the fire service. The carcinogens that come off the diesel exhaust, they get embedded into the, turnouts. And it's just not a good situation to have. The diesel exhaust is a carcinogen. And everything that I went back and heard from the experts on at the station design conference were shocked that we still had our lockers in our apparatus bay. But there's a lot of departments out there that unfortunately are dealing with that. The kitchen design, again, as I mentioned, the meal prep, just not the most opportune. This is the new station expansion, and I know you guys have seen this, but we're very close to getting this in to the county, and hopefully we'll go out to bid here shortly, as soon as we hear from PG&E. And then lastly, the training grounds. We rely heavily on our training grounds. We're the only department that still does reserve firefighter and part-time firefighter type positions where we run our own academy and teach these folks kind of our way of doing things. As a matter of fact, Morro Bay and Atascadero have borrowed our training grounds to run their people through academies and through props that they can't do anywhere else within their communities. So it's a vitally important tool for us, and it's something that we absolutely need to have, especially if we're going to continue with this reserve program. So I think it's important to emphasize, and hopefully we talk about it within the strategic planning aspect, that this is something we need to keep and even enhance. The current situation down at the drill grounds is obviously going to change because of some of our water modifications down there with a percolation pond and some wells and those types of things. The general manager kind of identified this area up here next to the railroad tracks and a little further in as an area where we could start looking at to move the tower and a lot of the props that we use. And so what we did was we actually reached out and looked at some grants. And as a matter of fact, Captain Baker was instrumental in this. And we've submitted, hopefully we get a $50,000 grant through Justin Winery. And Justin Winery likes to keep things local. And so they're giving out several of these grants up to $50,000 to different agencies and groups within the North County from what I understand. And so I think we wrote a pretty persuasive grant that kind of describes our need for this training facility. So this would give us an additional $50,000 to kind of throw at that should we get the grant. So hopefully we'll get there. With that, that concludes my report, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. So when I look at the report, because you referenced 1162 calls, but when I look at the slide where it's got the monthly call volume by unit, there's a total of 1,225.
Yeah, so the problem we have with CAL FIRE dispatch is they will, when we're toned out to something or dispatched to something, and let's say we have a structure fire and I respond, the main engine responds, and then 7160 responds, and then let's say the utility responds. That's 4 right there added on top of that. So every time I respond, it's not a different call, but it adds to that number.
So this is the gross number of calls that you,
No, it's
Responses, call them
Responses.
units responding, is that?
units responding.
okay. Oh, is that what the E-team is? ETEM? Because there's a total of 18 calls. I'm trying to, because I can see C7100, E7160.
Oh, ETEM, that's Templeton. So
Okay.
that's,
And then, OES 388,
yeah, so OES 388 is the engine we borrowed
okay.
for about a month when 7195 was out of service.
And then U71 is the new
Utility,
vehicle.
yep.
Okay, so there's a total of 1225,
Right,
but you're only reporting that there's 1,162 calls.
right. So the 1221, like I said, so within that 1161, and I'm gonna do the best I can to explain
Okay.
this. If there was 1161 calls, yet they punch out Atascadero, they punch out Paso, that's 5 more units that responded to that one call within the 1162. But it adds the number of units on top of the 1162, which creates the 12
So the 1162 are the ones you only responded to or that were dispatched to you?
that were our dispatches.
Yeah.
But it also was our auto and mutual aid.
Okay, okay. So the other question I have is related to the response time. The response time, does it include all categories that you have listed as your calls?
When you mean all categories.
So
Oh, you
for an
mean like
answer, for a
fires?
good intent, does it include the good intent calls?
Yes,
And it includes the special incident types?
yes, yep.
Okay, and then related to that, so the average is 5 and 8 seconds. This is when you've taken the call, not when the call hit the dispatch center, correct?
So, okay, so that's.
You
some-
start, cause I
yeah.
need to know cause I'm looking at the, NFPA 1710 requirement, and it's got the alarm answer time is 15 seconds.
Right,
The processing time is 64 seconds.
right.
And it's actually 15 seconds 95% of the time, 40% at 99. The processing time is 64 90%, and 106 seconds for 95% of the calls. The turnout is 60 seconds for EMS, 80 seconds for fire incidents, and then it's got the travel time broken down 4 minutes, 8 minutes, and 10 minutes, depending on different categories. The first engine, the first full alarm, and then high hazard, high risk, or high rise incidents, which is really not us. So I'm trying to understand this alarm answering time, is that you getting that?
Let me back up and just take you through the process, maybe
Yeah.
that'll answer your question. So somebody calls 911, it goes directly to what's called our PSAP, which is the Sheriff's Department, Public Safety Answering Point. They are the 911 for unincorporated areas. Anything that's not on the highway, which goes directly to CHP, that's the PSAP for like cell phones on the highway type thing. How they break those apart, how they know which one to go to, don't ask me. That's an Elon Musk question or something.
Yeah.
So with regards to that PSAP then, which is the Sheriff's Department down on Kansas Avenue until they move it here. They take the call and they will answer, what is your emergency, police or fire? And at that point, that clock starts running. And once they determine police or fire, what is supposed to happen is they transfer it immediately to county ECC, which is the fire dispatch center. That's the county fire department. And they get the information as they're typing in the information. That dispatcher is reading it real time. And they're starting to spool up the fire resources that go. So that time from call to time of dispatch is the time that we have a little bit of trouble getting. And so we're not real sure what time of call to time of dispatch is. It's supposed to be included in that, and that is part of that. The
In the standard.
in the standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the time that you're seeing is the call generated time from ECC. Potentially not the call received time, but the call generated time. And then when we get the call, we break it out in, turnout time, time travel, and on-scene time.
So your 5 minutes is actually when you're getting the call. The point from which you get the call
The point at which the call is generated at county fire.
at county fire,
Yes.
okay.
So it's almost like call received.
Yeah.
Then, so.
So it's inclusive.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if they receive the call and that dispatcher keeps that person on the phone for 1 minute, gathering information, well, yeah, that's a minute that we don't get.
Yeah.
Taxed on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I just want to know, when do you start this 5 minutes? When do you start counting it?
From the time the call is generated.
The first initial
Not really.
contact?
No.
So
It's with the county then, not the sheriff's.
Not the sheriffs.
It's the county.
The county.
So it's, the clock starts ticking at the county. And that's when you're starting this 5 minute clock.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's all inclusive, all categories.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. The thing that pulls out is our auto aid. That is just us in district. And that's what was,
So that's not 1,162 calls, that's a subset of that, calls
That's-
within the district until, if a call was in a Tascadero, that's been removed from that data
Yeah,
set.
yeah.
so that was, what did I say it was? 845 calls.
Okay.
So those times are generated off that 845 specifically, but there might be more in there up to, 1,000 calls within these auto and mutual aids. So it's kind of hard to break down that category.
Okay, so here's my second, more of a question concern. With your call volume, you've had a significant increase in call volume. And I'm assuming that Atascadero and Paso Robles has had the same situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, I look at the number of homes that they're looking to build in Paso Robles. I think there's another 1,000 homes going in.
1,500.
1,500, worse yet. My concern is that, we're already seeing a significant increase. Now with all this development that's going to be, or that's occurring, who's watching to make sure that there is a sufficient number of fire resources available for all this development? Is it county planning?
No, it'd be the independent, it'd be the, like, City of
Individual
Paso, City of
agencies?
Paso Robles would be responsible for its own.
And us, for
And,
us.
and so my concern with that is, are they really on top of it? Because if we've got this reliance upon, this mutual aid, are we gonna see some of that mutual aid diminish? So have you seen any of that this last year?
The diminishment?
Yeah.
No. So with regards to mutual aid, we have seen some diminishment in, like, for example, if they ask for Paso to come to us, they're not available. Well, within seconds, they're saying, if Paso's not available, we're sending you Tascadero.
Somebody else, okay.
Yeah. So that system is a little bit dynamic based on where calls are and how many calls and who's committed.
Yeah.
We've had to turn down calls to Atascadero.
Yeah.
Because we were on a call and they wound up sending, another department. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's very dynamic. It's kind of hard to, but back to your main question, as the general manager alluded to, each community is responsible for keeping an eye on whether or not their fire department has the adequate capabilities to serve the community.
And is there a national standard?
NFPA,
There is.
NFPA.
Well, and there's hundreds of standards within NFPA.
Well, but I'm looking at what the recommendation is. I would think that there would be a national standard to say, here's the number of fire stations per capita.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry. So, yeah, typically, there is, and typically, if we get to that point, what I would recommend is we contract with a consultant to do what's called a standards of cover, SOC. And that standards of cover, then it will identify any deficiencies, or whether we're actually at a point of exceeding our call volume capability. I don't think we're there yet. We've kind of just hit that we're no longer a volunteer fire department and we could never go back there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we just hit 1,000 calls, and we've been, kind of teasing with that number for several years now, to the point of, okay, as we start getting closer to that 1,500 call, and actually a good example of that is where Morro Bay is at. Morro Bay, single station department, they have 4 people, full-time, but they split their crew. They have 2 on the engine and 2 on what's called a squad. Or do they do their squad or a truck? They were
I
doing,
thought they cross-staffed them, but I could be wrong.
yeah, so, what they will do is when they get 2 calls back to back, they have 2 on each. But if they get a fire, they complement one another, and now they're 4-0 staffed, but on 2 pieces of equipment. So they, as Captain Baker said, they can cross-staff and run 4 people on 1 piece of equipment. So depending upon how they set it up for that day.
I think
But
Southern
they're,
California fires was just kind of an eye-opener of just some real serious shortfallings, and I think some of the firefighters available. And there were other environmental situations that contributed to that, but it just seemed like, we're also in a very fire hazardous area.
so one thing I'll add to, my goodness. One thing I'll add to this is we just got done, excuse me. Too much talking, I don't do this much talking. Is we just got done with our ISO inspection. And I just got the numbers back, just met with the ISO inspector that came in. And we're in a really good shape with regards to Templeton Fire. We're gonna still be a 3.
Good.
When we get the new fire engine and when that comes on board and we're able to put that engine in reserve status and then have a reserve engine, we could potentially reduce to a 2. So that's even better. So lowers homeowners insurance.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yep. And so, in those types of situations, we're in pretty good shape, right now. And primarily as a result of our water and kind of our terrain. We don't have the wildland urban interface, the local, what do they call that, local severity zone maps through the state
Yeah.
are about to come out. We'll see where we're at, but in the last several iterations, we have not seen any part of Templeton in a high fire severity zone at all.
Templeton CSD.
Yeah, CSD,
Yes,
because I
I'm
think
sorry.
you
Not
drive
the
down
mailing.
Vineyard and
Yeah.
you're in that fire hazard
Yeah.
area.
But the as the general manager said, the CSD boundaries.
No, that's it. That's all I had.
In like previous discussions, we had talked a lot about like the SAFER grant, and I just wanted to know about when does it expire? And I think you had mentioned that we're applying for a renewal. What is the status?
So it expires in February next year. And to date, and a lot of the chiefs have been asking the same question, where's the SAFER grant? And it has not appeared yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
So
we're all kind of emailing our contacts at FEMA and saying, hey, where's the SAFER grant?
Are they still there?
Are they afraid that it will not be
Might be,
released?
pardon me,
Is there a fear that it's not going to be like it just will not be
there,
available?
the potential that they're not gonna run the SAFER grant this year is there. I doubt it, because everything that we're hearing, especially on the legislative side, is enhanced funding for
Fire
fire.
safety.
Yeah,
And you said it's in February of next year?
is when our SAFER grant runs out, correct?
And then how long, do they typically go for?
3 years. Yep. They're typically 100% for 3 years.
So it might be beneficial to shoot off an email to Congressman Panetta.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking too, when we have our strategy discussions, but, you know.
I think it wouldn't hurt to shoot an email, all of us concerned about that, because I think there is a huge reliance upon having that SAFER grant.
Yeah, unfortunately, Congressman Panetta's, has a little bit
He's
of
a little
pull.
bit,
Yep,
but it's
he has a
like,
little bit
if
of
we
pull
all
there.
light a fire under him,
Yep.
no pun intended.
Yep. Not a literal. But yes, yeah, that's why we get those, letters of recommendation and support from all of our legislative people.
Were there, other local recipients of SAFER grant, like, Tuscany?
Cambria, yeah, theirs is running out this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
They have, a little different tax share than we have. And they also have, a bond measure over there, and the general manager might be able to speak to it better than I do. I'm not that familiar with it. But they have a bond measure similar to our Measure A that enhances their fire department over there.
It brings in just a little bit more money.
A little bit.
I think their budget's close to double what ours.
It is.
Ours was pre-SAFER.
Because of the measure or?
Oh, both tax rate and the.
So if our tax rate, what we get, and there's a report out there. But if we receive 1% of every tax dollar, they receive 2%.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one. I haven't heard, maybe it's not the right place, but I have heard for a while that your driveway out there is in pretty poor condition, but I haven't heard anything about getting it fixed or a budget item or anything like that.
So the driveway itself, I'm trying to see where we're gonna be at with the station and incorporate that into the station remodel.
Okay, I was gonna wonder if it's part of that.
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise, yeah, we may have to do something. You get a few more rains and it starts hydraulicking under that concrete, it'll crack more and more, and pretty soon it starts to fail pretty significantly.
I have one quick question. You mentioned the Templeton T Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Wayne and I both live on that hill and and we have an HOA only for the sole purpose of weed abatement. So are you looking to do some weed abatement? And it's really only our property line, which doesn't cover the entire hill.
Right.
So are you looking at something beyond that?
I am looking at the area along 101, down into
Okay,
that
yes.
drainage, the creek bed.
Which we don't do.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's gotten bad.
Yeah.
So eliminating a lot of that, and then, coming along Toad Creek, past Florence and down through kind of where it is to Eddy and potentially even over to Lost Hobbles. So the Fire Safe Council has significant money to do these types of projects. The problem that we run into, and I've done several of them with the city of Tascadero when I was there. The problem that we run into are property owners. And a good majority of the time, we'll hit some property owners that'll throw a snag into the project because they don't want the environment touched.
Oh, we have no problem with you going down there.
I did.
I mean, there's a road that you've
Yeah.
driven probably that road that
Yeah.
goes back there, but we only do up the hill
Right.
in the weed abatement, but not down in that gully area because, it's our understanding that's Caltrans.
Correct.
So-
Well, parts of it are,
Yeah.
Caltrans only
Also
does
probably
3 feet from the highway though. I talked to Dennis and he said that's all they
3
do.
feet, well, yeah,
Well, and
and
again,
it's no man's land.
if you reach out to Caltrans and kind of get them involved, play nice with them, they will typically do a little bit more depending upon the fire severity. So in that particular area, we could talk to Caltrans and say, hey, look, if something comes off the freeway here and it runs up the hill, you guys do something with this drainage down there. And if they've got money, most of the time, they're pretty good about it.
Well, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Just to end this with a little levity, when you said that, you're not used to talking that much, I just happened to look over at Captain Baker and Engineer Stewart, and a big smile on both. They
Never
looked at
coming
each
to another
other with a
meeting.
big smile.
We're never coming to.
Yeah, it's like this is the last time.
Well, he just threw you under the bus, didn't he? Right
I
there.
thought I was being secretive about it, but I guess.
Wow, okay.
And don't
That's
pick
it.
on
You-
Logan.
You guys do a great job no matter what he says.
Just a couple of quick questions. Any status update or on the fire truck order that we have put in? Is the time for the timeline and how things are going?
Good luck.
Yeah, so it looks like we'll be potentially going back in January to do what's called the pre-con. And that pre-construction meeting sets up all the parameters of what we want on the engine and that type of stuff within the already agreed to and paid for costs of the engine.
You say January?
Yeah,
Next January?
yes.
That starts the build process.
That's the.
So right now, we're in line, nothing's actually happening
is
for
that-
our engine yet.
So is that what we expected, or are we ahead, or?
No, no, no.
or,
Well, that would be a little bit ahead, but we'll see. They say their lead times have been getting shorter and shorter. So we'll see what happens.
So it's possible that January could get moved up?
It could. I don't have a lot of hope for that because once we're stuck in the actual place in line, that's kind of typically what it is. But there's always that potential. And then typically from the pre-con meeting, it's a 9-month build.
So. And then I heard that a new maintenance facility for fire engines opening up.
Oh,
in Paso.
Well, we,
Paso or-
yeah, so we think. South Coast Fire Apparatus, EDS, went out of business. And they were the ones that were doing all of the big repairs that we've had over the last couple of years. Right now, we're using JK, Jim Kelly, and JK Limited. And they do a fantastic job. And he actually shows up at the station and does the majority of the maintenance and repairs right here. If it's something significant, he's in south of Tascadero, so it would go there. But the bigger issue is when the Pierce engine gets here, I don't know if I want to call it a subsidiary, but a Pierce contract repair shop will be opening up back at that area.
Okay,
And it's called Renewal. And it's actually, that is a subsidiary of South Coast Fire Apparatus, which is the sales component for Pierce out here in California.
so that's gonna help with our warranty work. and
That,
things.
they will take care of all of the warranty
that's
work on
nice.
the new engine.
I know that was one of the things we were looking at, so.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
And so they're, from my understanding is they are in contract negotiations with that place. They had some legal hurdles that they had to get over with the previous mechanics and trying to hire additional mechanics, so.
Thank you. Any other questions, board, public? No, all right, well, thank you. So since there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and approve the 2024 fire and emergency services annual report.
Can I just, before you, make that motion, I'm sorry, I think there were a couple of typos that were discovered on the report. So if it's acceptable to you, if you'd allow us just to, if you, just note in the motion that, those can be corrected before this is posted online.
Okay,
As a final document.
all right,
They're already corrected and sent, so it's just a matter of.
just having the motion. Okay, all right. So I'll entertain the motion.
I'll make a motion that the board accept the 2024 Fire and Emergency Services Annual Report with the corrections that have been noted.
Second,
Okay, roll call please.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Peterson,
yes.
Mortensen,
All right.
Tyrone,
Yes.
and Fardonish.
Good job.
Thank you, Chief, sir. Looking forward.
Thank you.
Couple of weeks to your strategic plan.
Yeah.
That's gonna be fun.
Gearing up.
Yes. Okay, next item is the IWMA Special District Representative. General Manager.
Yeah, Liz Carey would like to present this item.
I'll
Well,
I will never want to present.
I think this is a.
I've got Larry Tice, Carey. And you,
Turn up
just
the volume.
This is real, I'll be very brief here, as you well know, special districts that have solid waste authority are members of the IWMA through joint powers agreements and MLA through special districts. There was an opportunity here a couple months ago for special districts to nominate somebody to serve as our joint representative. Both the current representative for special districts, Robert N. from Cayuga Sanitary, was nominated, as was your own board president, Fardonish. Those are the two persons who are running for that seat. Now is an opportunity for you to cast a ballot for one of those two individuals, should you choose to. We did receive a bio from Robert Enns as well as for Nagi Fardonish, and those are included in your packet. We don't have a recommendation. Maybe I should go out on a limb and say, since we nominated, Board President Fardonish, it would make sense that you.
I move that we nominate. Okay,
Okay,
We cast it.
We vote.
Vote
we vote.
thank you.
for who?
Fardonish.
You have to say the words.
Yeah.
I'll second the motion that we cast our vote for Naveed Fardonish for the IWMA Special District Representative seat.
Thank you. Roll call.
Peterson,
Yes.
Logan,
Aye.
Mortensen,
Aye.
Tyrone.
Aye.
And Fardonish.
Yeah, could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, aye.
Yeah, you do, you
Yeah,
do.
we'll
get
vote
vote.
no.
Stay.
No, just, all right, great, thank you guys. Motion passes, and I didn't have to do a speech, that's nice.
Oh, you wanted to do a speech?
Oh, well, right, next one here.
No, it's just.
I think you did that last time when you wanted to be nominated.
True, that is, Okay,
First time in history.
next one is the Local Agency Formation Commission Special District Member Election. All right, General Manager, I guess same. Oh, actually, this one is a little different.
Yeah, this is a little bit, slightly more complicated, very similar, situation. Special districts, all special districts within the county are members of LAFCO. We pay, a percentage of LAFCO's costs, and we have collectively 2 seats on LAFCO. Those seats are on a staggered, period. Both seats are open right now due to the prior, the person who held the seat that was lapsing in 2026 is no longer an elected board member, so cannot continue to serve representing districts. So there are 2 seats, one through December 26, one through December 28. There are 3 people running for the shorter term seat, the remainder term actually. That's Owen Davis from San Miguel, and Evie from the Como CSD, and Deborah Scott from Cambria CSD. Their bios and other information are contained in your packet. That's for the 2-year seat. I guess you could do this, I would just recommend doing this one at a time, the 2-year seat first, and then after you cast if there's a motion to cast a ballot for one of those 3, we can move on to the second.
I like Ed. I think he's got, a background that is more suitable for LAFCO. than the other two candidates. I don't know what everybody else is feeling.
I like the nurse, she's got 19 pages of.
Yeah, well,
Just
that's
tell-
not what she's going to a
tell-
hospital. You like nurses, I know.
Marry the one.
Yeah, I like that.
Ed, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, anything. I've met, Mr. Owen Davis, I have not met the lady, can't figure her name, so I'll probably be meeting her soon. But, I've met Eddie, so.
So I'll make a motion that the board accept or vote for Ed, the Napobo CSD to serve on the LAPCO seat for the term through December 2026.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call please.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Aye.
Tyrone,
Yes.
and Kardashian.
The motion passes 5-0 for Mr. Ed Ibby for LAFCO.
The second seat that's open is a full 4-year term on LAFCO. The current incumbent is Robert Enns of Cayuga Sanitary District, and he has been nominated to run again and is running again. And the other candidate is Naveed Fardanish from Templeton CSD, who you nominated. It's recommended that you vote for one of those two parties, and it would make sense to me that you'd support your own nominee. I do think there's some, I do think that in some of these cases, there is some real advantage to the district to have closer ties, better access to information, both through LAFCO and IWMA. I probably should have been more taking this more seriously, because I think that there is some value to our community to have somebody serving in this role. The idea, though, is to represent all special districts equally, but when you have that direct line of communication, you're in the know, you have a more in-depth knowledge of items that are coming forward. We do have occasional involvement with LAFCO formally and sometimes a little less formally from the district and from the community. And I think there are some advantages to the community to having representation directly.
Well, I think there's also an advantage of having somebody from a community service district that has a broader understanding of what the CSDs are facing. And I think that Robert has served on this in this LAPCO seat for a number of years. And I think it just might be a time for a change. So
Yeah, I also want to just say that, one of the things that just looking into this as I'm contacting different districts is come to a point where a lot of them aren't even involved. They don't even want to put the items on the agenda and things like that. And I think that's probably because of maybe lack of, they feel like lack of representation. They don't have any contact with LAFCO or anything like that. So, and as I contact them, then they're maybe willing to put the item on the agenda. And most of them been receptive with that. So that would be my goal, is to maybe bring back a little bit more participation, because even with some of these votes, we're I was talking to their executive director, I believe it was in 22, they didn't even get a quorum. So they just ended up going with whoever that.
well, I know you've been very active with CSDA as well, and I think having your representation on LAPCO, I think that you'll be able to bring back to CSDA and then to the other districts and here too as well. Some things that are happening with LAPCO, and I think that'll be a good change. So my recommendation is that the board submit the vote for Naveed Fardanish to serve on LAPCO
I'll
for
second.
the term through December 2028. Well, you're just pushing me along.
Somebody's got it.
Thank you guys. Roll call.
Yeah, that's right.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Aye.
Tyrone,
Yes.
and Kardashian.
Hi. All right, thank you guys. Only have how many more meetings?
Yes.
30 something, 20 something. Okay. Next item, but we don't need to do the strategic planning workshop, that's all done. General managers report.
Yeah, just a couple of items. This came up just before the meeting. We were having a short discussion. On March 18th, we expect board member Mortensen to be unavailable. And so therefore, we're not planning on doing a strategic planning workshop that night. So please go ahead and remove that from your calendar. I'm,
No dinner. No dinner.
no,
No
you're on your own. There'll still be some leftover fettuccine rolling some in the fridge. The meeting hasn't, the regular meeting has not been canceled, and I'll coordinate with your board president to determine if there are any items that come forward, but as of right now, we don't have any items that are pressing, and so I would consider it like a candidate for cancellation, because there aren't any items right now, and we know we're already gonna be missing one board member. So I'll coordinate with board president Bardanish on that. And
That's the 18th?
he'll ultimately make a decision about cancellation, as we get closer. There is quite a bit of rain it's been a dry winter except for the 1 week or a couple weeks. But there's actually quite a bit of rain in the forecast later, starting overnight tonight, through tomorrow, through Thursday night, and then some more significant storms over about the next 10 days, starting Monday through the following, early into the following week. So right now, it looks like a fairly wet period. We're ready, but rain impacts in this community are more on the cumulative side, and as the ground gets wetter and wetter, we have, the runoff occurs much quicker, and we have creeks that will swell much quicker. The Salinas Dam is about 95%, likely will, if the rain forecast is accurate, it will fill during this next period of time. And once that starts spilling, the river swells much more quickly and stays higher longer. So I will be monitoring that. It does affect our ability to discharge wastewater and some other things, but we're ready, and quite honestly, it's been a pretty dry winter. We could use some storms, although it will probably be a little inconvenient to many. And then I'll be out of the office on this Friday, but available by cell phone or email. I don't expect any periods of time I'll be out of. I won't be relying on Starlink or anything. I'll have just regular cell coverage, good to go. Not going nowhere exotic, just to San Diego again.
Your
See the
favorite?
grandson.
Baby Brody.
Baby Brody. My wife's been there like 3 times tonight.
Anything else, general manager?
No, those are all the items I have.
Any questions for general manager? Okay, anything from public? No, all right. Move on to the committee reports, Water and Wastewater Utilities Committee. Any questions on that? No. Okay, public? No, all right. Director's report and or comments, any board meetings or meetings that you have attended on behalf of DCSC or comments you want to make? No, okay, all right. We are good. So I think, let me see, as far as future item agendas, I think we're good. All right, okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys.